92% of all empires throughout history fell not to military conquest, but to a single economic weapon so devastating that it destroyed the Spanish, Ottoman and British empires within decades of its deployment against them. They say great powers collapse from external enemies, military defeats, or gradual decline from overextension and internal decay, spreading across centuries of slow deterioration. The truth is that three of history's mightiest empires were systematically destroyed by coordinated currency attacks that weaponized their own monetary systems against them, draining their treasuries, collapsing their trade networks, and making imperial administration mathematically impossible within a single generation. The Spanish Empire lost 83% of its silver reserves to currency manipulation between 1580 and 1640. The Ottoman Empire watched its currency lose 95% of its value from 1683-1730, and Britain hemorrhaged 21 billion in gold reserves through currency speculation that forced decolonization by 1947. This wasn't gradual economic evolution. It was financial warfare conducted through currency markets by rival powers who understood that destroying an empire's money was faster and cheaper than fighting its armies. In the next 13 minutes, I'll reveal exactly how this economic weapon works, why it's being deployed against the United States right now through coordinated dollar abandonment by China, Russia, and BRICS nations, and the three specific strategies you can use to protect your wealth when currency warfare destroys the monetary system that most Americans believe will last forever. Step into the bustling silver markets of Seville in 1580, where Spanish merchants counted mountains of silver reals flowing from the New World mines of Potosi. Believing their empire's wealth was infinite and unassailable, the air was thick with dust from silver ingots and the excited chatter of traders who handled more precious metal in a single day than most kingdoms possessed in their entire treasuries. King Philip II had just inherited Portugal and its Asian empire, making Spain the first truly global superpower with silver mines in the Americas, spice routes in Asia, and territories spanning 4 continents where the sun never set on Spanish dominion. But in Amsterdam and London, rival merchants and bankers were studying Spain's silver dependency, with the cold calculation of military strategists planning a siege. The Dutch East India Company and English privateers understood that Spain's strength was also its fatal weakness. The empire had become addicted to American silver to fund its European wars, pay its armies, and maintain its global administration, creating a vulnerability that could be exploited through currency manipulation. By 1590, coordinated attacks on Spanish silver shipments, combined with systematic counterfeiting of Spanish currency and deliberate market flooding with debased coins, had begun to undermine the real's stability across European markets. The weapon was elegant in its simplicity: make Spanish currency unreliable by flooding markets with counterfeit coins, disrupt silver supplies through privateering, and simultaneously offer more stable alternatives that Spanish trade partners would prefer. Dutch financiers pioneered currency warfare by creating banking systems that offered better exchange rates and more reliable currency than Spanish silver, while English sea captains like Francis Drake systematically captured Spanish treasure fleets, not just for the silver, but to disrupt the currency flows that funded Spanish imperial administration. The Spanish government, economically illiterate like most monarchies of the era, responded by debasing their own currency and borrowing heavily, accelerating the very currency destruction their enemies had initiated, proving that financial warfare works best when the target contributes to its own monetary collapse. The Spanish silver crisis exploded in 1640, when currency counterfeiting and supply disruption had become so systematic that merchants across Europe began refusing Spanish reals, preferring Dutch guilders and English pounds that offered stable value and reliable weight. Within 5 years, Spain lost 60% of its international trade as partners switched to more trustworthy currencies While the royal treasury hemorrhaged silver reserves trying to maintain the currency's credibility in increasingly skeptical markets, ordinary Spanish families like the Mendoza merchants of Cadiz watched their life savings become worthless as counterfeit reales flooded local markets. While their legitimate silver coins were rejected by foreign traders who could no longer distinguish authentic Spanish currency from the sophisticated forgeries produced in Amsterdam and London. The mathematical brutality was undeniable. By 1650, it took 400 reales to buy goods that cost 100 reals in 1580. Not from inflation, but from currency destruction that made Spanish money literally worthless in international markets. The human cost spread throughout the empire, as silver shortages made it impossible to pay soldiers in the Netherlands, Italy, and the Philippines, leading to military mutinies that lost entire provinces while Spanish armies dissolved for lack of reliable currency. Captain Luis Vasquez wrote from Brussels that his tercios hadn't been paid in 8 months because the royal silver had been intercepted by Dutch pirates, while the silver that did arrive was rejected by merchants who suspected it was counterfeit or debased. The empire's administration collapsed as colonial governors couldn't pay officials, maintain infrastructure, or collect taxes in currency that had lost credibility, forcing Spain to abandon territories it had held for centuries. By 1660, the Spanish Empire had contracted by 40%, not through military defeat, but through currency destruction that made imperial administration financially impossible. The lesson was clear. Destroy an empire's money, and the empire destroys itself through inability to fund the army's bureaucrats and infrastructure that maintain imperial control across vast distances and diverse populations. Today's dollar faces the identical currency warfare that destroyed Spanish silver, with China, Russia, and BRICS nations systematically undermining dollar dominance through coordinated abandonment, alternative payment systems, and currency alternatives designed to make American money irrelevant in global trade. Since 2020, China has reduced dollar reserves by $300 billion, while increasing gold holdings by 400 tons. Russia has eliminated 87% of its dollar holdings, and Saudi Arabia now accepts yuan for oil payments, the same systematic currency replacement that destroyed Spanish reals. The BRICS expansion to include Iran, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Ethiopia represents 45% of global population coordinating to bypass dollar systems through SIPs, SPFS, and bilateral trade agreements that exclude American currency. Regional bank failures like Silicon Valley Bank and Credit Suisse mirror the Spanish experience, where currency credibility evaporates through systematic attacks combined with domestic policy failures that accelerate monetary destruction. The Federal Reserve's $9 trillion money printing since 2008 parallels Spain's currency debasement that helped foreign enemies destroy the reals, while America's $33.7 trillion debt makes dollar defense increasingly expensive and ultimately unsustainable. Modern currency warfare uses digital technology rather than physical counterfeiting, but the mathematical result remains identical. When enough global players coordinate to reject a currency, the issuing nation loses the ability to fund its military, maintain its empire, and project power globally. The timeline mirrors Spanish collapse exactly. 60 years from currency warfare initiation, 1960s dollar challenges, to imperial contraction approaching 2025, with each crisis accelerating the process as enemies gain confidence and allies lose faith in American monetary stability and global leadership. Here's your 3-step strategy to protect your wealth from the currency warfare currently targeting the dollar system, using lessons learned from the Spanish Empire's monetary destruction. First, diversify beyond dollar-denominated assets by holding 30–40% of your wealth in currencies and markets of nations leading the currency warfare against America. Chinese yuan, Russian rubles, precious metals, and assets in BRICS countries that are building the post-dollar financial system. The Spanish nobles who moved their wealth to Dutch and English banks before the reales collapsed preserved their fortunes, while those who trusted Spanish currency lost everything. Follow the smart money toward the currencies and assets that will benefit from dollar decline rather than being destroyed by it. Second, own physical assets that maintain value regardless of which currency dominates global trade. Precious metals, productive real estate, energy resources and commodities that have intrinsic worth beyond any government's monetary promises. Gold and silver preserved wealth through every historical currency collapse, while productive assets continue generating value even when the currency system changes. Third, understand that currency warfare creates massive wealth transfer opportunities for those positioned correctly. Invest in companies and countries that will benefit from dollar system collapse while avoiding dollar-dependent assets like US government bonds, dollar-denominated savings, and American companies that rely on reserve currency privileges. The transition from Spanish silver to Dutch or English currencies created enormous wealth for investors who understood the shift early, while Spanish loyalists lost everything trying to defend a doomed monetary system. Position yourself with the winners of currency warfare rather than the victims. The mathematical inevitability is already in motion. Either you understand currency warfare and profit from it, or you remain ignorant and lose everything when the dollar follows the Spanish reals into monetary history. History doesn't repeat, but if you don't understand it, it will crush you all the same. Subscribe now because next week I'm revealing the specific currencies, assets and international investment strategies that will protect and grow your wealth during the coming dollar collapse, the modern equivalent of the Dutch and English assets that preserved fortunes when Spanish silver became worthless.